All right, so the final time for this year. Let's go have a look at the rankings because, of course, we're the final week of the official season for the ATP, the ATP Finals. Before we get started, though, let's go see who won the ATP Finals and then go look at what it actually means for the rankings for the last time this year. So the only event last week was the ATP Finals, and it was Jannik Sinner beating Alcaraz in the final 7-6, 7-5 to go back-to-back in Turin. Of course, Alcaraz making his first final in Turin, so he did get a bit of a boost in the points. So let's have a look at that now. Before we get to that, let's round up the rankings for the WTA. There was some Billie Jean King Cup this week, but they don't count for points, so it doesn't really matter. We had Sabalenka at 1, Swiatek at 2, Gauff at 3, Anisimova at 4, Rybakina at 5, Pegula at 6, Keys at 7, Paolini at 8, Andreeva at 9, and Alexandrova rounds out the top 10 for this year. So that is what we're going to see first week of January when we go back to Australia and start the 2026 season. All right, let's go to the ATP rankings for the final time this year. And there wasn't too many changes. No change at the top with Alcaraz number 1. Year-end number 1. He wrapped that up by winning 3 matches here and going undefeated in the group stage. So he got to lift that big trophy over Sinner. Sinner comes in at number 2, but of course he won the ATP Finals, so he also won a trophy this week. Zverev comes in at 3 with Djokovic at 4. For Shelton, he drops down 4 spots to number 9, making way for Auger-Aliassime, who goes up 3 spots, making the semi-finals of Turin, up into number 5. So some big changes there. Fritz stays at 6 with Demonor at 7. Musetti goes up to number 8. And Draper rounds out the top 10 for this year. But you can see there, between Auger-Aliassime, who's at a career high number 5, and Ben Shelton, there is only about 250 points between those players. So there's 5 guys there that could very much be either 5 or 9 in the rankings going into the Australian Open next year. And of course, you want to be in the top 8. And if you can, try and be in the top 4 for a Grand Slam. So then you avoid some of those big, scary players at one of the biggest tournaments of the year. And there it is. That's it. Rankings done for the year. Of course, there's no points of the Davis Cup, which is happening next week. There was no points of the Billie Jean King Cup, which happened a little bit this week. So there it is. That is the rankings. We had Sabalenka and Alcaraz rounding out the rankings for this year. Of course, Sinner does have a very big opportunity next year to retake that if he can win the Australian Open again and maybe in February and March gain some points, because of course he didn't play that part of the year this year and Alcaraz did. Maybe there's a change in the rankings a little bit earlier before the clay season, but then Alcaraz might be able to just hold until the clay season because of course he's got a lot of points to defend there. But can he be number 1 going into April next year? I really think that unless Sinner does bad at the Australian Open, that he's probably going to have to give Sinner the number 1 spot back, but then maybe he'll get it back. So we might have a pretty fun battle there from February to April, changing over that ranking. But there it is. They're the rankings for this year. Let me know in the comments below what's been the biggest shock in the rankings this year. Maybe it was up the top. Maybe it was some of the players that debuted in the top 10. We did have a lot of top 10 debuts this year for multiple players on men and women's side. But there it is. Rankings for this year done and dusted. And the season is over.